Welcome to the Swamp. Finally, a Nordic survival game where you play as a Viking and can sail around and defeat monsters. I'm someone who loves Nordic theme and mythology, and when I heard about Valheim, I couldn't wait to see— oh, it's hyperpixelated. Well, that's fine. While not exactly how I imagined it, even from a gameplay perspective, I'm also not someone who cares much about graphics as long as the game is good. Well, is it? Let's find out in this review. My name is Excalligator. I rate games based on many categories that would fit into most survival games, based on a 1 to 5 system. If a category does not apply, it will not affect the game's overall score. Now let us get started. So I've played this game for easily over 200 hours, with many more to come as content is added. The majority of this review will be about pre-Mistlands, as I feel it's important to talk about the first half of the game to tell people what they expect when they play it, and to let them discover the late game things on their own. But I will mention a few of the new stuff as it becomes relevant to the review, and maybe a small Mistlands section in the spoiler area of this video for those who don't wish to know so that they may skip it. Keep in mind that this is the early access version of the game, and I do plan on re-reviewing it when it comes to the 1.0 launch. Valheim is a game where you are a Viking that has died, but before you can go to Valhalla, Odin has tasked you with cleaning up his mess, his enemies, in the realm of Valheim. Once they have been defeated, you will ascend. You prove your worth by starting from nothing and earning your keep, breaking your back, and conquering the land and seas. The game itself came into early access a while ago to high praise, with hitting several milestones in the matter of weeks, with millions of players trying Valheim, and since then it has been updated several times with more updates planned for the game before the full release. This game can run on a potato, and barely uses a gigabyte of memory. My friend managed to play it on her piece of shit laptop. If she can do it, so can you. Character creation is not that expansive, but it does have a decent amount of selection for you to create your own Viking. Not only that, your character can change realms and worlds without losing your progress, so you can keep all of your characters across the game or make new ones and play in the same worlds without losing your older characters. You'll see footage of my main character, then followed by my new character that I played for this review. You can have as many worlds as you want and load up whatever character you want in whatever world. The character creation itself is very basic and really deserves a 3 out of 5, but I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 because of the fact that you can change worlds seamlessly. The only things you cannot transfer are your buildings and anything that is placed, including the items in chests, but anything on you or in your inventory will go with you to other servers. Other survival games do not do this, and the few that do, or are now doing it, have way too many hoops to jump through and issues compared to the seamlessness of this game. The game starts off with you being brought into the realm of Valheim by one of the ravens of Odin, Honin. He will be your teacher in this game. Every time you witness or find something new, he will appear to you and teach you. As a veteran player, he does get a bit annoying when you can't turn him off on a new character, though there is a way to in the console commands, though I try not to touch that. You have to stop and talk to him and just cycle through his dialogue quickly. After he drops you off, you will notice that you are in a stone circle with many rune stones around. These stones are the only ones in the map, which is procedurally generated, and the stones will always be in the center of the map. I'll talk about the map more in the exploration section. From there, you can go out on your own, start gathering, building, and being introduced to your first enemies, who can be punched to death fairly easy. However, this game does not gate you in terms of locale, so if you wander too far from the meadows, you will surely die. The start of this game can be both a breeze and difficult. The meadows is baby steps compared to the difficulty spikes you will witness later. It's perfect for wetting your feet and teaching you the basics while letting you grow at your own pace, to a degree. However, it is still dangerous and not a full walk in the park, as you will discover the various dangers of the world, like tree falling physics that will crush you when you chop them down. The start of the game is going to be a 5 out of 5. It is a great introduction to the game that both teaches you and also gives you enough room to get off your feet. The exploration is crazy! The map is not only procedural, but also massive. It is impossible, or nearly impossible rather, to explore every single inch of any single map. Though don't worry, there is a fast travel system that you can build at a certain point. You can build portals, but you have to place them down exactly where you want to travel to and from, so you still need to explore before you could teleport to the exact location. The portals also can't be used when you are holding some raw materials, mainly metal ore, so there is still the need to travel and haul your cargo back to your settlement, or to make multiple homes and bases across the map where needed. As I said in the last section, you start off always in the center of the map, which will always be a meadow. The further you leave the center of the map, the harder the game becomes, from newer and harder biomes to even higher likely chance of finding harder creatures to fight, which you will notice will have stars in their names. Even so, you will find the easier biomes like the meadows and even the black forest all throughout the world, not just in the center, but the harder biomes like the plains and the Mistlands are further out, unless you have a really good world seed. By exploring, you will find many types of resources. By gathering them, you will learn how to craft with them. The more you discover, the better your playthrough will be. But also, most resources in this game are one-time gather only, with the exception of some plants and mushrooms. The trees, chests, caves, metal ores, stone, those are all one-time gather only, so you will need to branch out and explore new locations to find more resources to keep progressing. Though, unlike Stranded Deep, however, the world is so massive, you don't really have to worry about running out of resources in any given world. Also, some pieces like trees can be manually regrown with seeds. I managed to regrow the entire forest around my home, after cutting down all of the trees to make my castle. While exploring, make sure you are properly equipped, as there are environmental hazards like the weather system, but also nighttime is very dangerous. More creatures lurk in the world at night and are usually much more powerful and way more aggressive. There are also caves, which are basically like dungeons, but I'll cover that in the PvE section. The last thing I want to cover is the ocean. The ocean is amazing. The sailing is fully immersive and very close to how the game Zelda Wind Waker worked. What impressed me the most is how the waves work. In any other game, the water is set to a certain level, and there are barely any waves at all. Usually when they are, it's just an animation over the water graphics. Here, the waves are real. They pull and shove up the coastline, and when it rains, you can even get small tsunamis that crash over the land and the coastline. My home, being on the coast, is almost always flooded in the basement because of the storms that come through often. 10 out of 10 water. Water good. Though on a serious note, the exploration is going to get a 5 out of 5. Exploration is one of the most fun things about this game, especially with you having different playthroughs each time with the procedurally generated maps, and how it leads into the progression as well. The survival of this game is much different than other survival games. In other games, the biggest survival aspect is generally your micromanaging of food and water, on top of other various aspects, like sometimes your sanity or even sleep. Here, food is both optional but also encouraged. You don't have to worry about drinking at all, and food only extends your health and stamina bar for a period of time. With better grade foods, obviously, will give you more points. And as of Mistlands, there are now food that gives you a new resource, which is basically like a mana bar from fantasy games. Of course, many would want more HP and stamina to fight the harder leveled monsters, but at the same time, you can also try to go for a hardcore mode by not eating any food at all. It's all your choice. You're not gonna die if you don't eat either. If you run out of food, you will just simply have a lower health bar rather than starving to death. I would recommend cooking the best food you can, as the difficulty spikes between the biomes are insane, especially when you start to reach the plains and the Mistlands. Now, I didn't talk about the biomes as much in the exploration section because I felt it would be better here with a sense of difficulty. The meadows are baby's first steps. The second level, which is the Black Forest, is a bit harder, but really not that bad overall, as you still don't have any real armor by this point. Though it can still be a bit challenging, especially with the introduction of the first roaming mini-bosses, the Trolls. After you are done with the Black Forest, you should now have full armor and good healing items, as the swamps is your first major difficulty spike. Things become much more harder than before. The same with the mountains after, and the plains. But the thing with the plains and Mistlands while other zones, when you are geared with the equipment you get from each of those zones, you will be on equal level or can even surpass the challenge with your progression. The plains are still mildly difficult when you are fully geared with the gear you acquire from the plane, and the Mistlands is still hard even when you are fully geared from the gear you get from the Mistlands. The only negatives in this section that I can think about are both the death system and the skill system. When you die, you have to run back and retrieve your items, which is pretty standard. But not only that, your items will last a long time, so you are in no rush to get them back. However, because of the food system, trying to run back might not be as easy as other games. You might not have access to quick food to get your stamina and health up. So, if you die in a harder level area like the plains, everything will one-shot you, and places like the mountains you won't even be able to get close because of the cold debuff. The skill system is also one I do not like at all. While gaining skills is generally a good thing because it makes you better at each of the respective skills, when you die, you pretty much lose most if not all of your skill points in this game. So I do not think this should be in the game at all, and it is terrible and discouraging. Long story short, you know you are in for a rough time when a tree falling on you is the most dangerous thing in the start of the game. The survival, I'm gonna give a 4 out of 5. It's definitely different and even harder experience than most survival games, but I still don't like the skill system, and I feel that there should be something to help you run back to your body easier, like if your food buffs persist through death. The building by far is the best part of the whole game. You turn on your building mode by using the hammer tool. Over the various patches of early access, they are adding more and more items to build and decorate with. But not just that, it's not as restrictive as other games. Other games have snapping system so that walls snap to foundations and so on. Here, you can choose whether to snap or not. You can even build without floor pieces if you wanted to. You could turn and twist pieces easily and place them however you like. They also don't conflict with each other either. There is a type of weathering system where many items will take damage from rain when they are not under a roof. While under a roof, all items will be safe from the weather, with only a few items that are meant to be outside, so they will be fine without one. Though it's not as bad as they will only drop to a minimum of 50% and can be repaired for free, if you have the workbench nearby, that is. People have made massive structures in this game, from recreating works from other IPs to their own unique Viking lodges and castles. Now, you can't build in mid-air like in Minecraft. You do still have a stability system that you have to keep in mind or watch as your home crashes to the ground. Speaking of, while the majority of the trees can be cut down, some trees cannot, like some that are found in the swamp biome, for example. I've seen many times where other players have built tree houses just to have a troll take the tree down and the house with it. So if you want a tree house that won't tumble when the tree goes down, find one of those indestructible trees that I mentioned, which are in the swamp biome and some in the new Mistlands area. Another great thing about the building is that unlike other games, if you want to remove an item, you get all of your resources back, not just some of them. So it's a way of moving the items as well to destroy and rebuild. Another great thing about this game is that you can mildly terraform as well. You can dig and add earth mass with various tools you get from the second biome. Making moats is a great way to keep out enemies from your base. Which, of course, there is a base defense system, where depending on where you are in the progression of the game, you can have randomized chance to be attacked by various enemies, which will be affected by the location of your base as well as which boss you have to kill next. The invasions don't really target your base per se, they will target you, and if your base is in the way, they will destroy it to get to you. So it's a way to force you out and fight. However, if your defenses are sound, you can easily wait until it's over. Though the countdown will not work if you leave the invasion area event. If you leave the area, the timer will stop and wait for you to return. Sometimes you can even be attacked in the middle of a field. I was once attacked by a pack of wolves while in the meadows at the base of the mountain. Though generally it's only 2 points of interest that you have built, primarily bases with 3 or more structures. When it comes to the crafting, you can build a few things in your hand, but the majority of items will be crafted at the various workbenches, such as, of course, the workbench, the forge, the smelter, the oven, mead barrels, and so on. You learn recipes by gathering items related to that item you want to craft. Once you gather the item, you can make it. Of course, if you have the other resources it needs. While it is technically possible to make every item in the game from the start of the game, you are also mildly gated by progression as some items are nearly impossible to obtain without prior equipment. More on that in the PvE section. The farming is very good and sort of mandatory by the mid-game, being the plains. You will get the cultivator by the second biome, and you will be able to till the ground and make it ready for crops. You will find one type of veggie in each of the biomes, besides the meadows. When you find the flower, you can harvest the veggie, then plant them to make seed, which you then can replant. Each food item will yield you around 2 to 3 seeds, so you can multiply your supply easy. While you can skip farming if you wish, finding food in the wild is a bit harder than you think, plus the food bonuses from cooking is very beneficial. However, by the time you reach the plains, you will have to farm certain items in order to make the armor of that zone, being linen. And the flax and barley from the plains can only be farmed in the plains. So this will force you to make a small farm or base in the plains biome for progression purposes. You do not have to care for the plants, you only have to place them in a small distance away from other plants. There is a method of measuring that you can use by placing down a small 1x1 square to use as a ruler. Just remember to remove those after you place the plants, as they don't like being near building pieces either. Being too close to another item will cause them to die, but other than that, they don't require care. You can leave them planted forever and they won't disappear, which leaves players a way to plant flowers around their base. There is an animal taming system in this game, however, it is harder and more annoying than other games. You have to try to trap them and then get them to not aggro you before throwing food in and letting them eat it. Once tamed, they're also not really that easy to get them to follow you, like Ark creatures do. There are ways to move them, but it's out of your way mostly to do so. You can have a boar farm for meat. Loxes are also for food, but they can also be mounts as well. Wolves are fighting companions. You can also breed your animals so you can multiply your stock of food and other resources, as well as guardians to guard your base. Overall, I'm going to give this section a 4.5 out of 5. Everything about this section is very good, except for the animal handling. It's not that well made in my opinion, it needs to be worked on. But that is only a small section of this, so it's only dropped by half a point. So the PvE is both basic but also complex. You have different types of weapons with their own strength and weaknesses when it comes to their style and speed. With the Mountains update, there is now light armor that you can get for agility, bow, and knife builds, though there is still heavy armor for melee builds. On a side note, I feel that it is a really great thing that all of your equipment from armor, tools, they can be repaired at the workbenches for free. No other game I know allows you to do this, and I love it. I don't mind durability, but having a no-cost repair is a very nice quality of life. Most creatures only have 1 or 2 attacks, but they can pack a decent punch depending on which biome you're in and how far along you are in your progression. If you are in bronze armor and wander into the plains, get ready to get dive bombed by a Deathsquito. There are some attacks that can be dodged, though one of the better things to do is to block with a shield if you are a melee user. Shield blocks will drain your stamina, so make sure to have a lot of it or it will eat your health instead. Creatures also have strengths and weaknesses. You can craft certain weapons to be more effective, even elemental attacks, which affects some more than others, like the Grey Dwarfs being weak to fire, and Undead being weak to spirit damage. Unlike Ark, if you die to a mob, they will not corpse camp you. Most of the creatures in the world roam and wander. When they kill you, they will continue on their way, so you don't have to worry about them killing you again fairly soon, unless another pack happens to be nearby. There are caves and small dungeons you can find throughout the world to explore. They are randomly generated, which sometimes can lead to issues trying to traverse. But overall, I haven't had too many issues with the procedural dungeons. The types of dungeons will change with the biomes, as expected, and the further into the difficulty you are, the larger the dungeons. A cave that you will find in the Black Forest is only a few hallways and rooms that you can finish within a few minutes, while a crypt from the swamp will average you a few trips, granted if you want to salvage everything you can from it. Remember how I mentioned earlier that there are stars next to names from some creatures? In an MMO sense, 1 star means that they are above average, while 2 stars is basically like an elite mob. 1 stars are not too much harder than normal mobs, but a 2 star are twice as hard. There is a risk to reward factor though. If you take out a higher level starred creature, it will yield more rewards. You will be able to tell them apart as well as they have visual differences to normal creatures. Sometimes it's just a color, but other times there are differences. The first one you are likely to see as a new player are the deer. Normal deers are does, while stars have antlers. They are easier to find the farther you are from the center of the map, and more so in caves. They serve as mini-bosses, However, there are still roaming world bosses. There is generally one per biome, except for the meadows. The Black Forest has the Troll, the Swamp has the Abomination, you have the Serpents in the ocean, and the Golems in the mountain, the Zerkers in the plains, and the Mistlands having various larger creatures such as the Yawl. In order to progress to each of the biomes, you will be required to utilize the item dropped from the previous biome's boss. There are some progression you can try to do without killing the bosses, however it's much harder and sometimes impossible. In order to progress to the Black Forest, you need to mine ore, which you get the tool from by killing Eikthyr, the Meadows boss. The Elder of the Black Forest gives you a key to unlock the crypts in the swamp in order to find iron. Though there is iron in the ground, you won't really be able to find it unless you have the swamp boss's item, which acts as a metal detector, which you need in the biomes in order to find silver, and so on. The bosses are going to be the toughest creatures in the game. While Eikthyr isn't too bad, it gets more serious by the Elder, and more so the farther along you go. It can also be a hassle if you have a seed where the boss's altars spawn in weird spots. Like for me, the Dragon Motor spawned on the tip of a mountain with little to no area to run, and the Elder was on the coastline, so the cheesing method used by YouTubers was out of the question and useless to me. Even then, I had little room to run and dodge. In order to summon the bosses, you first need to find them. Eikthyr, the first boss, is given to you at the start, and it's even possible to find multiple altars in the first biome. After that, each boss only has a few altars spread randomly throughout the whole map. But like I said before, it's a massive map, so the best place to find the location is by finding the rune stones in the various caves and dungeons, which will tell you the exact location of the bosses. After that, when you travel to the altar itself will give you a hint as to what items to sacrifice in order to summon the boss. Upon summoning them, they will not despawn unless killed, which has led to a bit of a trolling on my side, as I like to summon Eikthyr and leave him up so my friend can walk into him, which is kind of funny. They can be kited as well. The first time fighting the Elder, a troll decided to invite himself and pummeled me into a pulp. While trying to run back to my body, the Elder kept roasting me while walking closer and closer to my portal along the beach line, tearing down all of the trees in its path. All in all, I'm going to rate the PvE a 5 out of 5. This game is built upon PvE, and it does so very well. It's both simple yet complex, and even harder the further you get into the game. While PvP is not the primary focus of the game, it is very possible to host a PvP server and fight other players, even loot their bases and bodies. I don't have footage of me PvPing, as my friend and I wanted to work together rather than fight each other, so no friendly fire happened there between us. However, I have watched others PvP on various streams and other videos. I've even seen how other players got creative and made pitfall traps inside of their base, hidden by a rug, and another player fell into the pitfall trap and died while trying to loot his home. You can, in one point of the game, make an item that will prevent other players from looting your items and damaging your base. They make nice decorative items too. I am going to give this a 4 out of 5. The reason why it dropped to a 4 is because the servers themselves can only hold 10 players online at a time. There are modded servers to hold more players, but I'm going off of the baseline game for this, so I'm dropping it a point because you can't host mega servers. This section will not be rated, as this is not a story-driven game. Besides the backstory given at the start, there is no story campaign to follow. However, I will say that around the world you can find various runestones that will give you a bit of world lore here and there, like on how the Grey Dwarves were created and such. As I said before, there is not much story to follow. However, the backstory you are given is that you are dead, and in order to progress to Valhalla, you must complete the Trials of Odin in the realm of Valheim. Given that this is one of the many realms of the Norse mythology, you will notice Yggdrasil in the skybox, and the many branches that glow a green amongst the blue, which is very pretty, especially at night. You can even find branches of the Yggdrasil tree in the new Mistlands area that you can harvest for resources. I'm not going to rate this section, as the story is not the main focus of this game. Normally this area is for story spoilers, but this time it is going to be a section I use to talk about the Mistlands, so if you wish to skip, feel free to hit the next timestamp. The Mistlands I played on the PTR, as well as some of it during the actual launch a few days ago. It was very difficult as a solo player. The bugs are already difficult with the new armor you get from the Mistlands, but also that they spawn in packs and will overwhelm you easily. The mist itself makes the whole zone hard to see, though the little wisp you get as a zone-specific torch does help to see in the immediate area. There are dwarves you can find that are neutral, and only attack you if you attack them or their structures. They are also fairly hard to fight unless you manage to separate them. The new caves are also very hard to traverse, as it is full of bugs that will all jump on you the moment you enter the cave. They can jump too, so standing on a ledge doesn't really help. While I like the difficulty spikes in this game, I feel that this is a little too overtuned when comparing it to the plains when you first start that zone. My biggest criticism is that the zone is way too vertical. The majority of the zone you have to traverse between the narrow valleys of the stone pillars. And since the Mistlands is usually along the coastline, you will find a lot of flooded marsh areas which are filled with environmental hazards like pufferfish. Traversing this zone is just as difficult and as annoying as the creatures that are way too condensed. However, I do like the new magic system that was added and making a mana build for it. While the magic is very powerful, it does require a lot of power to use, so it is best to use on creatures you know will be one-shot by it. Also, having friends nearby as a melee backup, as the regeneration is very slow to rebuild. The new chickens that you can buy from the trader are only received after defeating Yuggoth, which I feel for free feathers, it should be lowered a bit, as feathers are one of the most annoying things to gather in the game. I don't think it should be at the start, but I think it should be at least after the swamp biome, or maybe the mountains is better. The new feather cape is very nice too, and makes sense for the Mistlands given its verticality. So that being said, I think the Mistlands update is a 3 out of 5. I'm not going to count it into the overall rating of this video, as this is just a little standalone rating, while the rest of this video is an overall review. As this game is in early access, there is no endgame per se. However, let's define it as defeating the current final boss. Once you finish with Yuggoth, or the Queen as of the Mistlands update, you don't really have much more to do in terms of progression. But that being said, as a sandbox game, you are always welcome to roleplay or build. While it is not an easy option, there are ways to turn on a no-build mode, so you can be as creative as you want. Though given that the game dropped a ton of the player base after people hit the Plains boss when it first came out, it shows that many people want game progression rather than building or roleplaying. That being said, I'm going to give the endgame a 2 out of 5, per usual in my reviews. The modding I'm going to give a 3 out of 5. There are mods you can get for the game, however they are third-party mods. There are no official mods that you can get from the Steam Workshop, and Irongate has no intention of allowing the Steam Workshop mods either. The mods you can get from the other sites are not that bad though. Some allow for servers to have many more than just 10 players, while others allow for horses to be used as mounts, and many others. Just use at your own risk, as there is a chance to corrupt your game files. There are still servers that are somewhat active, however, you are going to find that most of them are players doing challenges, they are builders or role players. There are very few progression servers left. The game is best played co-op with friends if you have any. The game itself has very slow updates. That is one of the reasons it has lost a lot of the player base over the last 2 years. In those 2 years, it has only released 3 updates, being Hearth and Home, Wolf Cult, and the Mistlands, with at least 2 to 3 more zones left to finish before the game releases. The devs have also made mention that there are no plans for post-launch updates, so once the game is in full release, that will be the end of the updates. At least for now, we don't know if they'll change their minds or not. I'm going to rate this section a 3.5 out of 5. You can still find some people to play with in its downtime, and there are still updates for the game, though it will be quite a wait for them. This section is going to be a 4 out of 5. When I first played back in week 1 of early access, there were little to no bugs at all. People that I've watched seem to have the same experience, with very few people having any bad reactions or bugs that halted their progress. The score is dropped a little bit, however, because while the game can run on any computer, even potatoes, there is one thing that can get very annoying, and there's no way to get around, and that would be the auto world save. The world save always causes the game to freeze for a second or two, and sometimes will drop the frames both before and after it saves. This issue has been around for a long time, and instead of attempting to fix it, the devs only give you now a warning before the save so that you won't be in a fight when it does, to prevent you from dying from lag. That is the only issue I've had as far as I know, which is why the rating on this section will be a 4 out of 5. If you can get past that issue, the rest of the game is very solid for an early access. My overall score for Valheim is going to be a 4 out of 5. It is a very good and fun game, with a lot of exploration, great building, fun bosses to fight, and so on, with the only downsides being the world save lag that I mentioned, and the lack of official mod support, and some minor nitpicks here and there. I highly recommend this game and will continue to play it. When this game comes out to its 1.0 launch, I will be re-reviewing this game. If you are interested in watching me play survival games before and after the reviews, you can follow me on Twitch, and I'll see you next time. And that is the end of this video. If you liked my review, please subscribe to this channel as I will be making more in-depth reviews of open-world, sandbox survival RPG games, including those that no one ever talks about from the deepest, darkest depths of Steam. Some games that even look like the muck at the bottom of my pond. If you have any suggestions for what game to do next, please comment below and like this video. Florida Gator Man out.